Hey, this is Sky. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm in the office. Let's get into some stories, some Mafia stories. Set your mood right. I got some real fake hand grenades. These are drilled out, so all the feds watching, don't worry, these aren't real. I got these from the surplus store. Anybody can buy these. The reason why I bought these is I wanted a hand grenade as a jockey shifter on a motorcycle that I was building. And then it just turned out not to be such a good idea for the rest of the theme of the bike. And now they're just paperweights in my office. But when people come in here, they're like, oh shit, you have hand grenades. You're damn right I got hand grenades. Let's just jump into our story. Our main character, Simon Castro, had been blindfolded as he was driving with his uncle and underboss, Richie Mott, and they were driving him up Mulholland Drive to a big party at a fancy mansion. And Simon was nervous, didn't know what was going on, but he was along for the ride. So let's just pick up where we left off. Let me make sure we're in the right spot. Okay, here we go. Now let's pick up where we left off. Surrounding the property were hordes of black-suited security men, holding MAC-10 machine guns and roaming the hills like army ants. They all looked the same, like clones of each other, with the same build, each wearing the same suits. I didn't recognize a single one of them and figured the extra security were the Syndicate men that my Uncle Frank was referring to. The parking lot was full of fancy cars and limousines, scattered about like it was the Oscars. I wondered if my grandfather was going to be at the party, and I hadn't seen him in a while, and I hoped that he would be there to hang out with me and keep me company. We parked and walked in the front door through the main entrance. This little butler, standing no taller than 4 feet, making Richie Mott look like a normal-sized person, stepped forward, announcing my Uncle Frank's arrival. He yelled to the main room full of partygoers, "Capo Regime, Franklin Joseph Castro." Men in the main room turned and raised their glasses to my uncle, then resumed their conversation. My father came out of a side door right away and met us at the front entrance with a smile. He was dressed in his best suit, wafting of cologne. I could tell he went to the barber earlier that day with his hair looking shorter and cleaned up. For the first time, my father seemed like a laid-back, normal kind of dude. His body posture and facial expressions were totally different than I had ever seen before. It was like meeting a new person for the first time. He lunged forward with arms wide to hug and kiss each of us. With his huge smile, I almost didn't even recognize my old man. It was odd seeing him like that, but I enjoyed it. He kissed both of my cheeks, my own father. It was fucking awkward as hell. He said, "Simon, my son, you have made me and your uncle very proud over these last several weeks. You have proven to everyone around you that you are a true Castro. Your grandfather should be up here later this evening to see you. But first, we have some very important business to attend to. Oh, Frank, did you have any trouble finding your way up here? I didn't give you very good directions, and I know it's been a while." My uncle replied with what looked like a genuine smile on his face. "No, Tony, I've been up here a few times. You just don't remember. I was up here for Karate Mike's ceremony and Carmine Pagano's, and probably a few others." "Tony, coming up here this time was funny. We only made it up here by the skin of our teeth, didn't we, Richie? Your little hotshot son almost killed us both, or that's what he thinks. I think we created a monster out of him. Hey, maybe that should be his new nickname." My father chuckled at his brother and said, "Remember how scared you were when I brought you up here, Frank? I think it's natural for everyone who goes, I think it's a natural fear that everyone goes through when it's his turn to become a man of honor." I smiled and nodded at the conversation, keeping my full mouth shut just like Uncle Frank told me to do. I didn't want to risk saying something to piss my father off and ruin the mood. That was a special talent that I had cultivated over the years, but now had to learn how to keep in check. Sometimes the safest thing to do in life is just to stay silent. My father happily ushered us into a private meeting room, which was off to the left of the front entrance. The room looked like a library or a study, with books lining the walls and a few nice chairs next to a fireplace. The room was full of made men who were standing around chatting with one another and drinking what looked like several bottles of Big O's famous brand whiskey. The dwarf butler came in the room and rang a bell that was on the back wall. He rang it one time loudly. At the sound of the bell, several more men entered the meeting room and stood along the back wall out of the way. Within a few seconds, in walked the Don of the family, the legend himself, Tommy Guns Bogota. He had an aura about him, making him glow, like he was the Pope. The various capos from the LA family were all present. A handful of bosses from out of town were in the room also, and of course me, feeling out of place. Tommy Guns looked old, tired, and worn. However, he still had a royal image, like an aged king of an ancient empire. When the room was full, the butler shut the door and locked it. Tommy cleared his throat, and everyone went silent. A pin could be heard dropping in the next state over. It was so quiet. Tommy slowly panned the room, looking deep into the eyes of each man. He started talking in English, but slipped in and out of Italian as he went along. He said, "Tonight we celebrate. I have opened the books to see the induction of a very important person into the Black Hand. With this oath here tonight, we will bring a third member of his famous bloodline to the family. On this wonderful evening, we are here to recognize you, Mr. Simon Castro, our newest brother and full member of La Cosa Nostra." Tommy Guns began to recite a traditional prayer in Italian, and everyone bowed their heads. I didn't understand a single word of it. Frank stood up to grab a short golden sword off the back wall behind us. I stood at the head of the room next to my father. The other men around the room were each staring at me with their evil eyes like hungry vultures waiting to feast. My father was grinning from ear to ear in a creepy, cult-like manner, making him look kind of like the Joker. He was as proud as any man could ever be for his son in that moment. Tommy Guns spoke his prayer in Italian as he held my hands in his hands. I repeated the prayer back to him like a parrot, saying each sentence slowly and struggling through the pronunciation of the Italian words. After the prayer was finished, Tommy stepped to my side opposite my father. Frank took the sword, grabbing my hand tightly in his hand. He leaned forward and whispered to me, "Don't worry, kid. This won't hurt. It's almost over." He opened up my left palm and dragged the sharp golden blade across it. He cut me enough to make me bleed, but not badly enough to where I would need stitches or anything. I winced at the sight of my own blood as it filled up my hand. Frank took a photo from his back pocket of Saint Rosalia, the patron saint of Palermo. He lit a corner of the picture on fire with a candle. He placed the burning photo in my hands and said to me, "As this picture burns, so will your soul if you betray the family. Joining the Black Hand is for life. You have shed your blood to get in, and you will shed your blood to get out." I let the picture burn into ashes as I rocked it back and forth between my bloody hands. When the fire was out, I tossed what was left into a trash can. Frank doused my palm with what was supposed to be holy water, but was really just a bottle of water, and then gave me a towel to wipe off with. After I was cleaned and put a bandage on my hand, I hugged my Uncle Frank and then turned to Tommy Guns to address the boss. I said, "Thank you, my Don. It is an honor to be with you in the family." Tommy Guns smiled and hugged me with his frail arms to welcome me. I smiled over at my father, who was watching me with glowing eyes like a hawk. When Tommy released me from his clutches, I turned to my father. He braced me tighter than he ever had before, with both of his tiny little arms around me like a ball python from the pet store that wouldn't let go. Everyone in the room was smiling at the sight of me and my pop embracing. It was awkward. I tried to pull away politely, but he held me so tight. He said in my ear, "I love you, son. You've made me very proud. Welcome to our family." The men in the room cheered, giving a salute in Italian and holding up their drinks toward me. So let's stop there. We'll continue next Monday. Thanks for watching.